Oh, welcome to episode 3420. No, I'm playing for watching this. Welcome to the Big Idea podcast. It is a phenomenal pleasure to be talking to the wonderful Anna Rodriguez. How is everything going? How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here and talk about my entrepreneurial life, I think.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a great podcast. We have a lot to talk about, but
Yeah.
I want to, and I know we were just talking about this like 30 seconds ago before we put the camera on, but I think it's very interesting whenever like a startup CPG brand, their founder actually is not born in the the country they're operating with, right? So being born in Spain and growing up in Venezuela, do you think any of those principles or any of like the ways, like the business lessons you learned there apply to InBite, when you moved to the US and you started the company here? Do you think any of that like transferred over to, creating the company in the US?
Definitely, yes. I graduated in Venezuela in 1994 as an industrial engineer, and I never went to work in corporate.
Yeah.
Actually, my thesis was about another entrepreneurship.
Okay.
We had a textile company that used to manufacture sporting bags, sporting goods, either for a brand or for private label.
Mhm.
And then when we decided to move to the US in 2007, after several years, um, my husband and myself, we asked, what do we want to do? Do we want to get here into corporate as an industrial engineers? It's not a big much of a deal. I mean, all of our titles were ready to be applied in any industry.
Mhm.
And we decided to try and do it again. So a
Mhm.
lot of the learnings that we had in Venezuela, even though the US is a whole different culture and the US is a much bigger country,
Yeah.
let's say the starting pillars were from that entrepreneurship. And I'd say that the starting pillars of the entrepreneurship back in Venezuela were from my grandparents, Giancarlo's grandparents and parents also, which had to be entrepreneurs themselves when they got to a different country.
Growing up in Italy and transferring all that knowledge and stuff pretty much to the US, what were some of the things that helped you guys in the actual States? Whether it was, for you, it might have been, I know we were talking about learning, reading from books. I don't think maybe they had YouTube back then, but going to courses. What were some of the things that when starting the company, right, you actually learn and actually kind of defeated that learning skill? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you learn about the structure of what you need to build, okay? Let's say legally,
Yeah.
and how to make an organization work, what you need from every stage.
Yeah.
And when you do it a second time, let's say you already have a map, okay? A map of work, okay? And then in what you need to add in that map is different actors in different stages. Let's say you're growing, so you get to add, let's say, your marketing department, and then
Yeah.
you're growing more, and you get to add your sales department, and then you grow more, and you get to put more people into production, and which people into production, let's say your safety and quality manager or another operators manager, so that you learn, and then you just copy paste. Okay, every time you copy paste. Of course, I'd have to say this. The thinking of every entrepreneur is going to be different depending possibly on the experiences that they had and the careers that they had. I think that in this case, being Giancarlo and myself, both industrial engineers, we have a way of, let's say, working, organizing ourselves. And that structure is very likely coming from what we studied in our years of college, of course.
And also, like, so when you go to college and a lot of different things, I've heard that it's difficult to actually take some of those principles and apply in real life, and whether it's books, do you think it was hard for you too, or was it just easy?
And, well, once you're in college and you get to, let's say, go to practice, okay, either you're already working there during your college years or whichever it is that brings you to real life. Yeah, there is a difference. You're going to see that college is mainly theory,
Mhm.
and then applying it is what gives you the real touch of life. But whatever you see in theory gives you the floor, okay? The floor to act and know your possibilities.
Yeah.
Okay, because if you don't have that floor, then you're in limbo. You don't really know what to do unless you start studying by yourself
Yeah.
from internet, which at my age we didn't have. I mean, when I remember listening the internet connection when I was in college,
Really? Wow.
and there was only one room in college, and there were about, I don't know, maybe 30 computers in a college where we were 5,000 students, so go
Yeah.
figure.
Go figure, right? I actually wanted to touch on this a little bit because you kind of just talked about it a little bit. When you're actually like, well, I'll preface it like this. I have very little experience with like being in the manufacturing world, so I don't know all the ins and outs. But I find it fascinating that when people actually create something with an actual product, like I pull up like a bar or anything, and you guys, invite that product came from a whole process that actually came either from a factory, from a house, whatever it was. Can you maybe walk me through the process of like when you were actually like, forming the factory or forming the manufacturing plant in the first place? How did that look like from somebody that maybe at that point never even touched, going into, making a
Yeah,
product, anything like that? Can you touch a
yeah,
little?
I get your question,
Yeah.
especially because we were coming from textile industry. We knew nothing or little about food.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew something. Fortunately enough, we had both worked for a brewery company, big company, right? So we knew some things, and then in theory, in the labs of the school, we would know some things. Well, it looked like, oh, I'm gonna say this. I do remember praying a lot
Yeah.
because I
Okay.
knew nothing, right? So I needed a lot of, let's say, illumination to understand. I did study a lot because if you're getting into food, first of all, understanding your niche, right? Where do you want to start? Let's
Yeah.
say you want to do beverage. So if you want to do beverage, you have to know about liquids. You have to know about water, and you have to know about additives. You have to know about different things that beverage has to have and why you're making that beverage. In our case, we were going into bakery and our niche was gluten-free. None of us are celiacs, but we saw the niche, okay? And like I said, we knew nothing. We started the first 3 years, it was a lot of self-study.
Really?
And a lot of trial and error. I mean, here's the deal, and I'm going to say this for startups in food. You have your cookies at home, okay, or your brownies or your bread, whichever it is, and you think that from your kitchen, you're going to go to a factory, even if it's a small co-manufacturer, and your product is ready for retail, right? Because it's delicious, because everybody likes it, but there's a whole bunch of work
Yeah.
to get that product to retail. And I'm only going to talk about the manufacturing part. So in that manufacturing part, you have to understand, first of all, if your product is ready for machines, okay? Because if it's not, if you have to do it manually, then that's a whole different cost.
Hmm.
So you have to know about cost, you have to know about timing in the manufacturing process. Go
And
ahead.
and I was just gonna ask. So I know people that are in that situation where they are making stuff from their kitchen and all that. What was the process of you taking that product, which I'm guessing you made in your kitchen or at home, and
Yeah.
actually putting it into a factory and scaling it up?
Yeah, so we started out with a cookie, and like I said, I'm explaining how it was. Everybody liked it. We started doing it by hand. So we started renting empty time in bakeries,
Mhm.
okay? And because these were bakeries and they weren't gluten-free necessarily, we would have to clean up the whole thing and basically isolate the space that we were going to work in. Okay. And then we thought, this cookie, if it goes into a nice packaging, I'm retail ready. I'm going to go ahead and sell it. What we didn't know was about one thing that's called shelf life, right? And that the cookie had an expiration because of the ingredients it was made with. Okay. So like I said, there's a lot of trial and error. We quickly learned, and then we started studying more what we needed. And then we started seeing, oh, wait a minute, maybe this is not the right cookie to get into the shelves, because I can do whatever I want, but it's never going to last that long. It's
Yeah.
always going to refrigeration. So a lot of trial and error that went on for about 3 years. And then we did place a product in different retail stores. We got contacted by people that wanted to manufacture. And at that time, we already had a small place. It was really small.
Sure.
But we had workers. So we started manufacturing a lot of things by hand.
Mhm.
And then what we knew was, okay, what comes after making it by hand?
Yeah.
Because let's say that was our field of work.
Sure.
So we do know about production lines.
Yeah.
And then if a product was good enough to scale, we would go ahead and purchase,
More
say a
stuff.
small machine that would help us out in this process and make it more efficient.
Yeah, and what do you feel was like maybe one of the things that came easier for you guys? I mean, obviously you have a background in textiles and whatnot, but I think there's always like one thing that every brand has that's just their PowerPoint. Like, what was that thing for you guys? It just came easily.
Well, I have to say this. At the time we were starting, paleo diet was like everywhere.
Yeah.
And among the gluten-free diets, I'm going to say that's the easiest thing to bake. Okay,
Really?
because you don't have a whole bunch of ingredients in hand. You have a few that you can use. And generally, the recipes are fairly simple. So that helped us out a lot. Then, let's say, knowing of efficiency
Mhm.
helped us out a lot. Knowing about the cost structure of a product,
Mhm.
um, uh, basic things that I don't think you have to go to college to understand.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'd say that's what I can remember.
And then the other side, what do you feel is something that like even nowadays it's a little bit more challenging and you're kind of having difficulties with, but of course you're going to be able to win it over and succeed. But as of now, what do you think at this stage in the business, 15 years in, is something that's kind of catching you by surprise and you're like, huh, a little trouble?
Well, challenges now I'd say is growth. Okay.
Oh, wait,
What?
in what way? Like you mean just with the
In every way. I mean, in every way you point out to growth. Once I'd say in the smaller stages, you can control better certain things, right? When you're growing, um, either if it's that you need capital, either if it's that you don't have the right team around, and you're trying to build it out. Let's say I can point out also to what's it called? Getting to know people in the industry,
yeah,
okay, which helps your growth.
growth, yeah.
And then also in growth, you get to know more things every day, let's just say, that
Yeah.
you didn't know, and
Mhm.
that costs you a lot of maybe money or maybe time, things like that.
Yeah.
That at the end of the day is money. Yes, you learn from those experiences. I say also, I'm going to point to picking out the jobs that you should be doing at certain stages within growth. Maybe those jobs that are little, that are little in volume,
Mhm.
they no longer make sense.
Yeah.
But they're still your clients, and how do you maybe say, oh, right now I'm not the right co-manufacturer for you, having the ability to say yes or no
Yeah.
is difficult all the time, but within growth, I think it gets complicated because you have to make decisions that align within your growth.
Yeah. And when you mean growth, do you mean more like you want to do more wholesale? Do you want to go more D2C? What do you mean?
We're pointing to B2B in every way.
Okay.
Okay. B2C for us, yes, we do see it, but we understand that there's a whole bunch of costs to grow B2C.
Mhm.
And even though we want to do it, we're going to do it slowly, okay? Because for us, the most important thing right now is being able to grow with the resources that we have
Yeah.
and with growth itself, with the return that we're going to get from that growth.
Yeah. And I think one other thing I really did want to go into just now that you're kind of mentioning everything is when you're trying to, and I'll say this, I'll call you out on this. I see this a lot in, social media and everything. Even 15 years in, you're still going out to like marathons, 10Ks, you're out in the field, getting your shoes dirty, putting the work in, even for samples. You know what I mean? What's that coming from? Like, where's that coming from that you're still wanting to be out in the field, even at 15 years into the business?
Well, that comes out of learning, okay?
Okay.
Let's say this. I started out with our brand. We started out with a brand, but
Hmm.
then we grew more being a co-manufacturer.
Yep.
And we kind of left our brand behind. Um, I'm not going to say at all it was on purpose, but somehow it was because we didn't understand ourselves what we wanted to offer in the market. Okay. And since we were doing a lot of different gluten-free diets, let's say that we kind of lost ourselves as a brand of what we wanted to do. And then all of a sudden last year, we started working more, the team members of the family started doing more brainstorming.
Sure.
Okay. And one of the things that we said, we have to be true to ourselves. What we can offer is some type of gluten-free diet, be Mediterranean diet, because that's where we're from. And it happened that we had a lot of products that let's say we developed for maybe private label,
Hmm.
but that were within um, our line of products that we wanted for ourselves.
Yeah.
So we went back to the brand, okay, last year. And backstage, we're working a big deal on the brand, on the presentation of the brand, the colors that we're picking, the story that we're going to tell as a brand.
Yeah.
But now what makes a difference is that we're not in a rush, okay? We're going to take our time. And taking our time means, okay, go back to the fields, see what people think about your product, right? Because I think it's a great cookie, but it's not about me. It's
Yeah. It's
about what they think. Surprisingly, the couple of products that we have right now that will be in our brand, people are liking them a lot, and I think that they align with the time. Right now is the time for these products, let's just say.
yeah.
Also, I think we have much more experience in gluten-free. It's been 14 years.
Yeah.
And like I said, we studied, then we went to training a lot of training with teachers, okay? A lot of training with clients that we've had,
Yeah.
that let's say growing their product in our facility made us understand, oh, what if we use this machine instead of this one,
Yeah.
and that meant more efficiency, things like that.
Yeah, and I think nowadays, especially since you're somebody more experienced, because listen, considering I think it's half of all businesses fail in the first, I think 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. So even 14 now, like that's a huge accomplishment.
Mhm.
When looking back at when you started, right, in the CPG world, what are maybe like one or two things that you wish you had known when you? And I know it's a cheesy question, but I'm genuinely
Yeah.
curious. Most of our audience is in that stage. What are like one or two things you wish you had known?
Well, first of all, I took for granted that food space was really easy. Like I said, well, if I worked in textiles, food is easier because everybody eats, right? And I think it's all the way around. I think it's the hardest field right now. There's a whole bunch of people competing, a lot of good brands in the market. It takes a long time for a product to hit the supermarkets. I
Yeah.
mean, I have brands that we work with, and they've been working really hard backstage.
Mhm.
And then, a year goes by, 2 years goes by, and that's when they're actually in a supermarket. That's a whole bunch of time. And when you try out the product, you're like, what? This is delicious. Why isn't it out there?
Yeah.
And it doesn't really depend on the brand. It depends on the chain of events, let's just say.
Okay. And what are some of those events? Because I know people, I guess, like are in that same position. What are some things that in that chain of events you wish you had known to actually get the product out there?
Oh, well, first of all, the costs of the middlemans,
Mhm.
that's important. I see a lot of brands that don't know about that, and then, the product falls. Regarding ourselves as a company, I say this, I wish I would have known um, that Florida maybe is not in the United States.
All right.
I
Well,
mean, because pushing out products from Florida at some point was hard. The cost of shipping was crazy,
yeah,
especially during pandemic.
yeah,
Now I think it's a bit easier. Really, what I think I would have known is making food is you have a big weight in your shoulders. Okay,
yeah.
somebody's gonna eat it. It has to be safe.
Yeah, and I think also you have a bunch of regulations with the actual state and the way
Yeah.
they're using the food. That must be really tough. But one other thing I wanted to ask you, and I think this is like um the big question I think everybody's wondering, putting their heads right. Um, what is the big idea for InBite?
Mm.
What is the big idea of the company in your eyes for InBite?
We've always worked to build a legacy. Okay. We did not get the chance to do this in Venezuela. Our company there lasted 25 years, and all of a sudden, we lost everything. Not because of, let's say, we didn't want to work or, because of the circumstances. So, Invite means a second chance to build this legacy. I remember when I graduated from college and I saw in Venezuela like, oh, this company has 50 years, this company has 30 years. And I wished my company that I was starting at that time would have, you know, 25 years, 30 years, 50 years. So unfortunately, even though our company there got to 25 years, I was never able to see it because I got out when it turned possibly around 16 years. Okay. But that's what I want to see in Bite. I want to see, in Bite 25 years, 30 years. We're
Yeah,
not working for I don't know, for 3 p.m. We're working for, 2040, 2050.
yeah.
Even though let's say, we get old, we hope that this continues. This is what we're trying to build.
When, if you want to pass it on to, somebody else, or if you want to continue running it, let's just say 30, 40 years from now, what legacy, you said legacy, but what type of legacy do you want to leave behind?
We envision a company that was able to make gluten-free products that would taste and feel just like the counterparts
Mm.
that contain gluten. Okay.
Yeah.
Already we're in that stage. We can make a bread that tastes like any regular gluten-containing bread.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what we need is to spread this brand or spread, our manufacturing products through US and maybe more.
Yeah.
Um, and safe food,
Yeah.
quality. That's all that we see. We don't work with any artificial ingredients.
Yeah.
We don't work with preservatives that are artificial, things like that. You don't need that in food.
Mm.
What you do need is knowing more about the ingredients themselves, the structure of, any product that you want to make. Let's say if it's a bread, the structure of the components of the bread, and then you need to pick if you're gonna freeze it or if it's good to go to the shelves. That's it.
All right. So make something that people want to enjoy, that's healthier for them, that's gluten free, that'll last essentially a lifetime. Just want to
Yes, hopefully.
hopefully. All right. Well, listen, Anna, it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you for coming on the show. Is there anything you want to leave off to aspiring CPG founders that are wanting to get to your level even more?
Well, no, the pleasure is mine, first of all. Thank you. I feel the honor of being in your show. The only thing I'm going to say for entrepreneurs, and this I've spoken with a few that have requested our help, is the main pillar for any entrepreneur and CPG brand is perseverance. That's what we see. You need to be there. You need to fight. You need to maybe do a couple of tweaks, but continue.
Got it. Perfect. All right. Well, listen, again, it's a pleasure having you on, Anna. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye bye.